This week's challenge: religion is simply the result of culture and geography. It's not the result of seeking truth. Okay, how do we respond to this challenge? Well, let me give you 3 responses here. Number 1, this is simply the genetic fallacy.
No, it's not, and what you just stated is not actually the challenge at all. See, whenever I watch one of these supposed challenges, I go back to the Stand to Reason's website, find the written source, and see what we're actually talking about. The way you phrased it made it sound like we're discussing the formation of a religion, i.e. as the collection of social and cultural ideologies formed by a collective of individuals around a central geographical location compacted with mystical elements. This is why Christians and Muslims often have to go, well, we have to understand the social and historical context of either the Bible or the Quran on such matters as slavery and ownership of women. Thus, this is a valid criticism, as these groups argue that their holy texts are sourced from the all-just divine being, ergo we expect better moral guidance from said text than if they were sourced from the cultural origins at the time. If they came from God, we expect better. Therefore, if we are discussing the initial statement you've made, it is not a genetic fallacy, as the origins of said text are the core aspects of the religion. Therefore, they are important to discuss. If the Bible or the Quran ceases to be sourced from God, then they are worthless in their claims and thus crumbles the entire religion. However, what the source you give, as well as the greater discussion they source are in fact discussing, is the outsider test. The argument, simply put, is not that religions are the result of culture, but the continuation of religious beliefs. It is amazing how the removal of 2 words and replacing it with a single word can change an argument into a straw man, and when I viewed this video I was coming at it from the formation of religion argument, not the continuation of religious belief. Only when I went on to read the sources did this become clear. John W. Loftus was very clear in discussing religious belief, only mentioning the number of religions to then go on to discuss said beliefs as highlighted in yellow. His initial argument actually contained 0 mentions of religion. Ex-believer then incorrectly discussed a false position, most likely accidentally rather than maliciously, and you then failed to track down your original source for the argument and merely went on with the strawman version. Next time I suggest you follow your own sources through, as there's 2 arguments here. The first, religions are products of culture and geography, not truth, is not a genetic fallacy and attempts to falsify religions that claim their doctrines to be sourced from God, whilst the latter, religious belief is the product of culture and geography, not truth, is a hypothetical test in which the theist temporarily assumes no religions are innately true and tests them one by one. It's an anti-presuppositionalist argument.
Right? What's the genetic fallacy? It's where you fault the origin of an idea to dismiss it. And here's an example. If I were to say that I learned 2 + 2 = 4 from my kindergarten math teacher, Miss Crabapple, and then you come to me and say, oh, really? Well, your belief that 2 + 2 = 4 comes from Miss Crabapple, but did you know that Miss Crabapple is in jail, that she was arrested from embezzling from the school, that she was, this shady character, and then call into question my belief that 2 + 2 = 4 because the origin or the source of it was Miss Crabapple. Well, would it follow that 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4? Of course not. See, that's a genetic fallacy. You can't simply fault the origin of an idea or a belief and then dismiss it as false.
Well, great, because that's not what the argument is making. The source which ex-believer gave of John W. Loftus wasn't the original argument. It's not a genetic fallacy. It's a discussion to be had to develop skepticism and question authority, both cultural and household. If you went, I learned that 2 + 2 = 5 from my kindergarten teacher, Miss Crabapple, and because she was a math teacher who held authority over me and gave me, as well as the other students in our control, this belief, it must not only be true, but the ultimate truth. I would call this into question, saying, step outside your 2 + 2 = 5 bubble, where you presuppose its truth, for a moment, and let us analyse it. Here, let us get 2 jelly beans and another 2 jelly beans. See how many jelly beans there are. That is all this argument is doing.
But secondly, here's another thing that we could say. Could we simply apply this objection across the board and then dismiss secularism? So let's take, a country like Sweden or a country like Denmark where secularism dominates, and to simply say, well, those people there are secular, they have secular ideas simply because of the culture and the geography. And so let's just dismiss secularism as being false.
Culture is inclusive of history. You're holding a very static view of society that ignores that countries such as Sweden became secular without the use of genocide, ideological perjury, and cultural demands. It resulted from the absence of these things with an increase in education. Secularism doesn't claim to have a divine origin. It is known to be human in its origin, and therefore being proven to have human origins doesn't falsify it.
Well, no, of course. The objector's not going to want us to do that, apply it across the board, not just to, the Muslim who grows up in Saudi Arabia or the Hindu who grows up in India. Let's do this across the board and we can kind of dismiss all belief that way.
Well, yeah, we should apply this argument to all groups. And by this argument, I mean the actual argument, the one where people step outside what they've always assumed to be true and test it, not your strawman version. I do this with every video by an apologist that I watch. I do not just go, well, my absence of belief is correct because it is correct. I demonstrate that in the absence of reason to believe, it is both philosophically and scientifically correct to withhold belief.
And now here's a third response, and this is the problem. This is simply a sociological claim that can tell you nothing about the rationality of a claim. Right? So I can tell you that, yeah, if you grow up in Saudi Arabia, it's more probable that you're going to be a Muslim, but that doesn't tell you whether or not Muslim ideas are true or false. Sociology can't give you rationality. No, what we have to do is we have to rationally assess each claim. And so it doesn't matter where you grow up. We want to look at the beliefs themselves and see whether or not there's evidence for them and whether or not they are true or false. And you can't simply dismiss them based on culture and geography.
What? You did not just state the initial argument you were pretending to refute in its actual original form as your conclusion. I mean, wow, there is your basic level of morality, and then there is the stand to reason level of morality. I want to end here with a quote from the original blog post. Test your beliefs as if you were an outsider to the faith you are evaluating. If your faith stands up under muster, then you can have your faith. If not, abandon it, for any God who requires you to believe correctly when we have this extremely strong tendency to believe what we were born into, surely should make the correct faith pass the outsider test. If your faith cannot do this, then the God of your faith is not worthy of being worshipped. So you see, you've really made an absolute tit of yourself, Brett, as well as Amy Hall because she made the challenge post on Stand to Reason. Please learn to read up on what people have actually said initially. I know it's not entirely your fault, but I managed to track down all of this in less than 5 minutes, even though you never link the challenge article in your video description. Truly, you need to step up.